Director Wray, I'm deeply concerned that the FBI and the Department of Justice have become thoroughly politicized. I think this is a problem that began during the Obama administration. I think it metastasized with career officials during the Trump administration, and I think it continues and is even worse today under the Biden administration. I don't believe you personally reflect that politicization, but I think you've been unwilling to root it out and unwilling to hold people accountable for the politicization. I hear regularly from FBI agents and from professionals at the Department of Justice who are dismayed that our law enforcement has been weaponized and politicized rather than remaining apolitical as it has been for the history of our country. Yesterday, it was reported that Project Veritas had obtained a copy of an FBI training material which listed various symbols and themes which, in the FBI's estimation, were indicative of, quote, militia violent extremism. Now, these symbols weren't things like the Ku Klux Klan or the Nazi Party, which naturally would be symbols of that, but instead they included, rather astonishingly, patriotic symbols of our nation and our history. Included on this list is the Betsy Ross flag. Now, that's fairly remarkable that the Betsy Ross flag in the FBI's indication is indicative of militia violent extremism, because among other people who have been publicly alongside the Betsy Ross flag, we have President Barack Obama, who was sworn in directly underneath two Betsy Ross flags. But it's not just President Obama. We also have President Biden, who was sworn in under Betsy Ross flags. It's not just the Betsy Ross flag. Also on this list is the Gadsden flag as a symbol of violent extremism. Now, the state of Virginia has a license plate for the Gadsden flag, as do many other states. I think people would be astonished to find that having that license plate, the FBI indicates that you're a violent extremist. Also included on this is a text that I was particularly struck, is the Gonzales battle flag. Come and take it. As indicative of being a violent extremist militia. Well, I will self-report right now that every day in the Senate I wear my boots that have the Gonzales battle flag on the back of them. Director Wray, what are y'all doing? This makes no sense. Do you agree with this FBI guidance that the Betsy Ross flag and the Gadsden flag and the Gonzales battle flag are signs of militia violent extremism?
Well, Senator, I'm not familiar with the particular document you have behind you, and I'm not in the practice of trying to comment on documents that I haven't recognized, but I will tell you that when we put out intelligence products, including ones that reference symbols, which we do across a wide variety of contexts, we usually take great pains to put caveats and warnings in the document that make clear that a symbol alone is not considered evidence of violent extremism, and it's...
Well, but Director Wray, you don't include things like Antifa, you don't include things like Black Lives Matter. Instead, you identify patriotic Americans as suspects, and I would note there's a pattern of this. As you're aware, the National Association of School Boards asked the Attorney General to investigate parents as domestic terrorists under the Patriot Act. Now, it did so because it was upset about moms and dads coming to school boards and disagreeing with the policies of those schools. 5 days after that letter, the Attorney General sent a memo to you directing the FBI to target parents for investigation. Since that time, the National Association of School Boards has apologized for the letter because it was so indefensible, but that hasn't stopped the FBI. In fact, you've created a specific threat tag directed at parents. So let me ask you, how many moms and dads who have spoken up at school boards has the FBI interviewed or investigated since the memo from the Attorney General?
I am aware that we have had a small number of assessments, which is less than an investigation, and a few full investigations. Hold on.
So how many have you
Hold on.
interviewed?
Let me finish.
I'm asking a question, our time is limited.
I don't know the number, but that not necessarily, but let me finish, that are not necessarily of parents. We have individuals who have made threats against a variety of people, sometimes school board officials, sometimes other people as well.
Director Wray, I will point out the House of Representatives has sent you oversight letters detailing dozens of investigations under a threat tag directed at parents, moms and dads, who G-men have come in because they spoke out against mask mandates or vaccine mandates or critical race theory, and suddenly the G-men show up. And this was after the Attorney General claimed it wasn't happening. And so the pattern, sadly, we've seen, you say you don't know how many there are. The follow-up will be, I'll send you a letter, and you'll send back a letter that says, I refuse to answer it. Let me give another example. Recently, there was the case against individuals charged with kidnapping and murdering Governor Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. That case ended up an absolute debacle where the 4 people who went to trial, 2 of them were acquitted, 2 received mistrials. None of them were convicted on even a single charge, and the basis of the defense was entrapment, that the FBI, that paid enforcements for the FBI, had suggested and had incited the conduct. Let me ask you, how many FBI agents were disciplined or reprimanded after that disastrous case and the misconduct that led to every defendant being acquitted or having a mistrial on every charge?
Senator, I can't comment on a personnel matter. I can tell you that that case, as I understand it, is now pending a retrial, as I understand it.
Well, the special agent in charge of that case has now been sent to D.C., to the Washington, D.C. office, and now leads the investigation regarding January 6th. Is that correct?
That doesn't sound right to me.
That does not sound right. The name of the individual is Stephen D'Antuono. It was run out of the FBI Detroit field office. And by the way, I will point out that the lead investigator, Special Agent Track, are you aware that he was apparently fired for allegedly beating his wife after coming home from a swingers party, and he'd made multiple derogatory political posts about President Trump showing political bias? Are you aware of that?
I am aware of, I think, the incident you're describing and action that was taken about it.
Director Wray, I sent you a letter last week about the FBI's decision to try to obtain sensitive personal information related to concealed carry permits in the state of Missouri. I've got the letter right here. Have you read this?
I have had a chance to glance at it, yes.
Good. So let's talk a little bit about it. Why is the FBI attempting to audit concealed carry permit records in the state of Missouri?
These audits go on, they look at small samples in order to make sure the system's being used properly. They're not focused on individuals or their Second Amendment rights or anything like that. And in fact, these audits, which go on, as I said, every 3 years, I think is the cycle. We had one in your home state in 2018, for example, and I think it was very uneventful, and I would expect this one to be as well.
You're correct that there was one in 2018, and what the sheriffs of Missouri say in 2018 is that the FBI did not request concealed carry records. You are requesting it this year. In the state of Missouri, only the sheriffs have these concealed carry records because Missouri law explicitly forbids concealed carry permit information to be turned over to state officials or to federal officials for reasons that you can surely understand. We've seen recently what's happened in California, for instance, when gun owners are exposed, their personal information put out into the public record. So I just want to understand why it is the FBI is now seeking from our sheriffs, and we're talking about multiple sheriffs who have contacted me, who have contacted other state officials, who have spoken to the press, saying that the FBI is now asking for the names of concealed carry permit holders in the state of Missouri. Why is that? If you've not done it before, I don't understand.
Well, again, I'm going to have to look deeper into to give you a more fulsome answer to your question.
What steps would the FBI take to make sure the information remains private if you're able to obtain it from these sheriffs all across Missouri?
Again, I'm the same answer. I really want to be careful not to speak when I don't have all the facts.
Okay, so you're not going to answer my questions. Well,
No, I am going to answer your question. We're just
Well, you're
gonna
not
answer it
answering them
not
now.
here because I don't have the answer.
well, because you're under oath and because you're not prepared to answer them. I'm disappointed, frankly. I sent you this letter days ago. This has been on your radar screen. The Attorney General of our state sent you a letter before that. You've known about this. This is of significant concern. It directly affects Missouri state law. You can understand the position. You've praised your local law enforcement partners earlier today, Director. You're putting them in a terrible position in the state of Missouri. State law says they cannot turn over these personal records. The sheriffs cannot. You are asking them to. Apparently, in an unprecedented fashion, they've not been asked this before. I want to know what in the world you're doing with this. And frankly, I don't like the fact that the FBI is snooping around the concealed carry permit records of Missourians. I don't like it at all. I don't know what you want to do with it. I don't know what you're going to do with the information. But I don't like that you're putting our sheriffs in this position, and I'm disappointed that you're not ready to answer my questions.
There is the perception that we have two tiers of justice, and one for people that are favored and one for ordinary Americans. And I think that has come through in many of the questions that you've heard from us. I want to ask you just a few things so that we can get it on the record that I think would help restore some faith in the Bureau, in the work they're trying to do. Americans looked at what they perceived to be, and I think rightly so, a ton of money that was wasted on the Russia collusion investigation. So do you agree that the allegation of secret collusion between President Trump and Russia was a hoax? Yes or no?
I don't think that's the terminology I would use, but I think there's been a lot written on this subject, and both in the special counsel's report, the inspector general's
Just yes or
report.
no is fine.
So that's not a term I would use.
Okay. Do you agree that the Hunter Biden laptop was not Russia disinformation?
Now you're asking about an ongoing investigation that I expect our folks to pursue aggressively, and I can't comment on that.
Okay, and you possess the laptop, right?
Again, I can't discuss that in
Can't.
an ongoing
Okay.
investigation.
Director Wray, is it a crime under Section 1507 of Title 18 to picket and protest outside of a federal judge's home to try to influence his or her decision?
I don't have the statute in front of me, but that sounds like a fair description.
So on numerous occasions in recent months, there have been large-scale protests outside the homes of Supreme Court justices in the Washington, D.C. area. Yesterday, the head of the Department of Justice Criminal Division confirmed that the Biden Justice Department has not brought a single case against any individual for breaking that law. Why were there no arrests for an obvious violation that played out on national television? Did someone in the Biden Department of Justice direct you not to let FBI agents enforce that law?
No, I don't think we've gotten any directive to that effect. I think part of what you're driving at, respectfully, goes to questions about the interpretation of and applicability of the statute. And while I absolutely understand your interest in the question, I think this is one of those times where I would point to the department as the lawyers who are making
Well, I have it right here in
decisions about
front
how
of
to
me. It's not
enforce it.
very confusing. Whoever with the intent of influencing any judge in the discharge of his duty pickets or parades in or near a building or residence occupied or used by such judge shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for not more than 1 year. I mean, it happened on national television news. Were there no self-starting FBI agents in the area that thought, wow, they're committing a terrible federal crime, I'm going to go arrest them?
Questions as to the enforcement of that particular statute constitutionally are better directed to the department.
Well, I don't think there's much question about the constitutionality. In 1965, in Cox v. Louisiana, the Supreme Court held up a virtually identical state statute. In 1988, Justice John Paul Stevens stated that it would be constitutional to prohibit protesting outside even an elected official's home, not judges' home, but elected officials' homes, because, quote, there is simply no right to force speech into the home of an unwilling listener. So why did no FBI agent in the national capital region, seeing a crime committed repeatedly on national television, not go enforce the law? I mean, don't you expect your agents to go enforce the law? I mean, if they're aware of a bank robbery or kidnapping, do they need direction from on high to make an arrest?
Well, our agents are, as we've discussed at some length in different ways throughout this hearing, are up to their necks enforcing all sorts of laws. And I wish we were in a situation where every federal violation that occurred in this country was something the FBI could have the resources to investigate. We have prioritized focusing on violence and threats of violence. And we are aggressively investigating in that space across the spectrum, including violence and threats of violence against members of the judicial branch. Senator, I had a flight that I'm supposed to be hightailing it to out of here